across the United States. The People Seating mission is sponsoring this program in our community and has set up a number of businesses, fire stations, schools, and nonprofits around the city to become safe locations where kids can seek out help. They just need to look for the big yellow sign that says Safe Place on it. Then go inside and ask for help. We will be quickly connected to them and ensure they make it back home or to whatever resources are needed. If you'd like to find out more about Safe Place and ways in which you can get involved, just go to pcmlincoln.org. Remember, when we all do a little, we change a lot.
Sometimes I just cannot believe all the storms we've gone through here.
I can only hope that we'll be able to leave this house to you one day, baby. You're our legacy.
Planning for these disasters will make sure we're safe, and is the best way to protect that legacy.
Protect your legacy. Visit ready.gov/plan for the tools and tips you need to start your emergency preparedness plan today. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Nebraska State Veterans Homes are here to serve veterans, their spouses, surviving spouses, and Gold Star parents. Join your fellow veterans and their families at one of our homes in Bellevue, Kearney, Norfolk, or Scotts Bluff. With a sliding scale to determine your financial contribution, an excellent clinical team, and plenty of fun activities, our homes are the perfect retirement choice. Learn more at veterans.nebraska.gov/homes. Sponsored by the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
This is Lincoln's home for sports talk on the FM dial. The home of Kansas City Royals baseball. KNTK FM Firth, 93.7 The Ticket. Coming at you live from the heart of Lincoln, America. It's time for The Finish Line with Mike Melby on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Start your
Oh, my throat hurts so much after that. Welcome into The Finish Line. I'm Mike Melby. Rebecca Pearson sitting to my right. Harrison Arnzen behind, driving the car this evening. And we got a fun show lined up. We've got Terry Fair from Borschlag Motorsports down in Dallas. His story of how he got into cars and just his knowledge is insane. Cannot wait to share that with you. Before we get really kind of into the show, I want to wish a happy birthday to a couple of guys that are in the racing community that I know. Adam Grossenbacher, Tim Fricke had birthdays this week. Huge shout out and congratulations to the owner of the sponsoring company for the Victory Lane segment here on The Finish Line. Mike Boston takes home the victory last night at Eagle Raceway. He, of course, is now the new owner of Eagle Motorsports, LLC. Eagle Chassis back and better than ever. Tonight on the show, I think I want to touch a little bit on Donnie Schatz, a guy I know we're efforting.
Yes.
Famous words in radio. We're efforting.
We're going to get him.
But Donnie has not had the success as much as he's used to. And is his tenure at Tony Stewart Racing over possibly sometime in the near future? And I almost wonder about the future of Tony Stewart Racing in sprint cars. I don't think he ever sells Eldora.
Oh,
what he's done for that track and the steward that he is for this sport is amazing. But his focus right now is on NHRA drag racing. His two teams that are not him, racing and NHRA, are competing for championships. That's what Tony Stewart Racing does.
He lives and breathes dirt track. I'm going down with the ship. He will not ever leave, my opinion.
Well, and with as far as Eldora, but it's a lot of money. I mean, we've talked about it. It's $900,000+ a year to race the World of Outlaw Tour. And even if you win as much money as Brent Marks did last year, he only won $658,000.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because he was able to cherry pick and go to higher paying races. So it's not an inexpensive sport. Granted, he's Tony Stewart. He's got a ton of sponsorship.
I was just going to say it's Tony Stewart.
But talk a little bit about that. And I want to give a shout out to Brandon Anderson and Josh Harris. They were kind enough and probably not very intelligent. They allowed me to come on and co-host the Quick Time podcast with them the last couple of weeks. Josh was actually gone this last Wednesday, and one of the OGs of that podcast, Jason Orth, was on with us. Jason's a guy I've known for, 20 plus years, 25 years now, probably. And I've known BA almost as long, but had a great time talking racing with those guys. I wanted to give them a shout out because they were kind enough to allow me to give the station and the show a shout out. But the other thing we're going to talk is this week at Eldora, $2,023,023 on the line in purse money with the Eldora Million on Wednesday and Thursday, and then the night before, KNIGHT, by the way, and then the Kings Royal on Saturday night. But over $2 million in purse money. And there was a SCCA event at Air Park. Did you go out this
I
weekend?
did not, I didn't even think to go to Eagle last night. So I had a weekend, DP's out of town. So
Yeah, he was in Vegas.
he was in Vegas. Yes.
Rico was a very excited young man. I
Yeah.
know that. So I think they had a great time.
I should have gone to Eagle last night and checked out SCCA. I just totally wigged out.
I want to, again, give a huge shout out and thank you to Mike Boston and Eagle Chassis. They are back. They're better than ever. You own a Sprint car, you have any frame damage, call Mike, 402-826-0302. I've been to his shop. It's a little smaller than he needs right now. They're working on getting some more space, but the dude does insane work. He's one of the best welders I've ever seen in my life. And him and I walk through safety and what he puts into those cars. Bottom line is, winning is great, but walking away from anything that happens, that is the most important thing. And that is all he thinks about down there is safety. But he will get you a car that can win. He'll put it in victory lane. He did last night. With that, let's get to the finish line. Or excuse me, we are on the finish. Let's get to victory lane.
Okay, yeah. You threw me for a loop there.
I threw myself for a loop. So
yeah, actually, give me 1 second to pull that up.
Okay.
Real quick. Yeah.
All right.
Got
Well,
that
then,
ready for you.
while you're digging that up, Rebecca, how was your 4th? What did you guys do?
It was great. Why are you asking me that? I don't know. It was last weekend. I have no idea what I did on the 4th of July. DP and I must have done something. What was it? Oh, fireworks. Let's see. So,
Well, you still have all your fingers, so that's
I
good.
do still have my fingers, although someone I know actually lit a firecracker and, it blew up in her face. And, she looks like the one-eyed patch now. She's okay, but, it just reminds you that fireworks are not for the faint of heart. So remember, it poured down rain. I'm trying to remember what happened. So it poured down rain on the 4th of July.
Yep.
So DP and I were in the house, and I said to him at like 7:00, I'm going out for a walk. I have no clue it's raining. It's like, I'm going out for a walk. See you in the bed. I come back 30 seconds later. I guess I'm not going out for a walk because the rain is just sideways, So there we were sitting in the house listening to the fireworks, because rain does not deter anybody from generating fireworks.
There's a few, and some of them in our neighborhood were, they were out. I was actually out. My neighbor behind me had decided it was a good idea to build a retaining wall up against the fence. I get it. The yard was weird and sloped, and maybe it drained towards his property, but he built the dirt up behind the fence about 1.5 feet above the bottom of the fence, so that my yard will not drain at all.
Oh, lovely.
So I was out with the drill trying to put a hole in the fence and almost ripped a plank out and whatever. But yeah, it was a big mess.
But it was decent weather actually until that night of the 4th
Oh,
of
yeah.
July
Yeah,
last
absolutely.
weekend, and then it's been crazy
Well,
since then.
I can tell you right now. Well, Harrison, we won't worry about it. This is
We'll get Austin on.
All right,
We'll
now-
shoot him a ring. See where he knows where he tucked that file out for
all
us.
right. No, this is the Victory Lane segment, and it is brought to you by Eagle Chassis. Cup Series is going on right now. Stage 1 just completed, and Kyle Larson has just taken the lead as they start Stage 2. I believe Ryan Blaney had the lead at the end of Stage 1, so we'll keep our eye on NASCAR. Xfinity yesterday at Atlanta Motor Speedway, John Hunter Nemechek brought home the win. And in the Truck Series yesterday at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course in Lexington, Ohio, Corey Heim won. Next week, trucks are off. The 22nd, they're at Pocono. Next weekend, you've got Cup and Xfinity, both at New Hampshire. Really fun track. High Limit Dark, we've mentioned that until the 25th of July. All-Star Circuit of Champions. Friday night at Ransomville Speedway in Ransomville, New York. Zeb Wise won by 11 seconds. Kerry Madsen in his second start in the Vermeer Motorsports number 55 came home second in that one. And then at Sharon Speedway, one of the best races of the year, the Lou Blaney Memorial at Dave Blaney's track, Sharon Speedway in Hartford, Ohio. Tyler Courtney goes wire to wire to pick up the $10,000 win next week. All-Stars Tuesday are at Lernerville for the Don Martin Memorial Silver Cup, $25,000 to win. That one, World of Outlaws, man. Rain won on Friday. That sucked, but great news for those who watched what happened at Knoxville a couple of weeks ago with the Outlaws. Carson Macedo, in one of the worst wrecks I've seen, knocked unconscious, cars on fire, didn't miss a race, said after he won last night at Wilmont, you know what? I've been a little out of sorts, and thanks to the team and everybody else for sticking behind me. Donnie Schatz led the first 15 laps. Macedo got by him out of 4 to come to take lap 16 and then ran away with it from there. Outlaws get ready. Hang on. This is why you race with the World of Outlaws. Tuesday night, Attica Raceway Park in Attica, Ohio. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, all at Eldora. Now, the Outlaws are not sanctioning the Eldora Million. Guarantee you all the Outlaw guys are still going to be there at least for Thursday night's $1 million show. But basically, all those Outlaw guys are going to race 5 straight nights for a whole boatload of money, $1 million to the winner of Thursday night's feature. Then it is the King's Royal on Saturday night. Prior night is the night before. World of Outlaw late models, dark this weekend. Next weekend, they're at Ponderosa Speedway. Lucas Oil late models, Thursday, Devin Moran. Friday, Chris Madden. And Saturday, Bobby Pierce beats Hudson O'Neal by 2 1,000ths of a second and takes home the win. This Tuesday, they're at Davenport Speedway. Eagle last night, as I mentioned, Mike Boston brings home the win, and he did it from 10th place. Mike was on a tear last night. Nick Bryan and Jason Edwards, 2 guys that wrench on that car. They had that thing rolling. And Mike's knowledge and the way he does the fine, small, little adjustments, and I know all the guys are really, really good at this, but being in the pits a few weeks ago, watching him do it, he had it dialed in last night. Mike Densberger won the modified feature last night. Mason Richards, the sport mods. Nick Beckman won the stock car A feature in the hobby stocks. Tyler Jackson won at Eagle last night. Beatrice rained out on Friday night. And last Monday, Jason Martin won the Melbourne Banks 360 Series race at Belleville on the high banks. That is a wild track. I was actually talking to him. I was hoping to actually maybe fill in and announce on August 4th and 5th down there for him, but they wound up with somebody else that was able to do it.
Okay.
Don't be shocked, I guess, if I come in some weekend and say, oh, by the way, we're going to jump back behind a microphone.
That would be great. Yeah.
You're going to have a little bit of fun.
I'm feeling sorry for Beatrice. That's got to be 3 weeks in a row. Friday night rain, just trashing their weekend. It's just unfair.
Yeah. What was it? The stat that I saw between like August 20th or something and June 20th. So August 20th of last year to June 20th, Lincoln had 7.35 inches of rain. And this year from June 20th until like July 3rd or 4th, or July 4th, they'd had 7.9 inches.
Yep.
Just absolutely crazy.
Well, and what's the chance it hits you Friday night at a dirt track race where you literally can't run in the rain? It just doesn't work. So, and speaking of rain, that Chicago race with NASCAR last week. Very interesting. Oh my gosh, that was so cool. I switched it on, and of course it's raining. It had a rain delay. Then they made it short. They shortened the laps because of the rain.
Yep.
But because of that, and because it was new, people are in the barriers. There was this massive pileup at one point in time where literally nobody could get by. There were like 10 cars just piled up and nobody could get by this track.
It's like Iron Man 2.
Yeah, it was it was crazy. I'm sure they'll have a bunch of learnings about how they structured that track. But in the end, it was fun. It was fun to see people that aren't from NASCAR coming in to race for that. Shane, obviously, who won. Jensen Button, my former dude from McLaren, who driving a NASCAR, which is fun. So yeah, it was good. It's nice to see a different kind of a field.
Now, I want to ask you, before we get to Terry Fair with Vorstlag Motorsports, I want to ask you about, because of your relationship with Tony Stewart. You said Tony is a dirt track guy. He is going to and he does. He supports it probably more than I kind of want to say anybody else ever.
Yes.
I mean,
it's
absolutely crazy. Ted Johnson, the founder of the World of Outlaws. I get it. I know what he did for the sport. I'm not going to argue that. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about a steward for the sport that would literally do anything for everybody and not worry about making a buck, that's a guy that's named Tony Stewart.
Yeah.
And he doesn't mind making money, and he does make a lot of it. But at the end of the day, he is so focused and everything is going so well with the NHRA team.
Yeah.
Ever since Ricky Warner and Donnie Schatz parted ways, Donnie struggled a little bit. And it's Carl Kinzer was the reason Steve was that good. We all found that out pretty quick. Because Mark Kinzer wasn't that good till Carl started wrenching for his son. But at the same time, what are your thoughts on what's going on with TSR right now?
Yeah, no, I thought about it a little bit, but I've had lots of conversation actually with Tony Stewart back in the day about dirt track racing, because of course I was asking him, why are you in NASCAR when you love dirt track racing? Because he would literally go home on the weekends, right? He would drive NASCAR and then he would go dirt track racing. So, passion, right? And we've talked about it. All these guys that come up through dirt track racing, you feel that passion and how committed they are to the sport. He's from Indiana, he's going to be committed to that in Eldora. I can't imagine, he would ever change that. But he's also an incredibly loyal person. And I don't think, if his team isn't doing well for a few years or whatever, I mean, that's racing. So I think, he's very loyal. I'd be surprised if he's looking to make any changes there. I wonder if he fields another car, to add to his team or something like that. But
very well could happen. One of the big talking points I know nationally right now is the partnership with Ford.
Mhm.
And Ford has been trying to break in and become dominant in sprint car racing for a long, long time. I go back to the early and mid 90s, and they were, guys would try to run them. And similar to what happened to Buddy Kofoid with Toyota Racing Development a couple of weeks ago, they had nights like that where things just didn't hold together the way they needed to.
And those development programs take a while. I was with Tony and NASCAR when they were with GM and then switched to Ford, right? So we went through that. And as the technical supplier of lubricants to those teams, you're having a lot of conversation when that discussion's going on. And what does that mean? It just takes a while to iron out new equipment, the new people behind the equipment, the testing data that you've got on it, right? And then just fine tuning it. So it can take quite a few years actually to iron out a program. So it wouldn't surprise me. And, I know Ford's part of the motorsports history, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't even knock the fact that they want to get in and get involved.
No. And they've had success. A Ford Motor won Knoxville last year with Donnie behind the wheel.
With Donnie behind the wheel, I know.
And he's won 3 races this year. But it's one of those that, kind of the talk. Donnie's a guy that doesn't like finishing fourth.
No,
he doesn't, and his average finish this year, I think, is somewhere around like 9.7. He struggled to even get in the top 10 some nights. He didn't even make it out of a B feature up at Houston's during the Houston High Banks.
Well, no competitor wants to finish fourth. I mean, these guys, right? They all want to win.
Well, exactly. So that's kind of been that national talk of is Donnie Schatz possibly thinking, you know what? I've had a great time here, but maybe it's time for me to go, because Donnie was not a big proponent of Ford.
Yeah.
And there's some, he made a comment nationally not too long ago where they were asking him a little bit about the struggles. And he says, well, I go back, I give the feedback that they ask me for.
Yep.
And some nights they pay attention, some nights they ignore
don't.
me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, again, that's part of the racer, crew chief, equipment people behind the scenes working that out. But they did help him win at nationals. So,
that's the whole point. That's where it's one of those
it might just be one of those nights where he's frustrated because he's been giving feedback and the crew chief's not paying attention, or, they're doing something else because, they have their method to their madness of trying to work the variables to try to figure out. In fact, Terry would be an excellent person to ask these questions too, of how you dissect what's wrong with the, from a performance perspective, what are you tweaking? How do you do that? I did want to just comment on Tony and, NHRA, because that happened after I left, and watching him and of course his wife, which, that's a whole nother story. I'm so thrilled for him to have someone. He's just such a great guy. I'm sure he's just trying to compete. He's just like, I can master this. He is that guy, right? I will do anything and he can master it. And when he masters it, it'll be interesting to see if he stays or if it's just something for him to master and, beat his wife perhaps.
Anonymous texter off the Sartor Heyman text line. And by the way, you can join the show on the Honda of Lincoln hotline or the Sartor Heyman text line, 402-464-5685. How do you know Tony? I'll let you tell.
How do I know Tony?
The very quick story, because we want to make sure we get to Terry Fair from Vorschlag Motorsports.
Okay, we're going to do it in 35 seconds or so. So how I know Tony, I worked at ExxonMobil for 24 years, and among many things, I ran the motorsports program there, and I did the deal with Tony Stewart with Mobil One at the time when he was when we were changing drivers and teams. We were with Penske for a very long time. And so that's how I know Tony. And I have wonderful stories, all of them good. He is a special guy. I mean, just, true blue, everything you hear about him. Absolutely. The number of nights that we spent at events talking, that guy would come and meet with customers and with our staff and not leave until the last person left. He'd play pool till 2 or 3 in the morning with customers. I mean, just brilliant, right? Just the perfect kind of spokesperson you ever want to have for your brand. How did I do?
Fantastic. You had like 3 seconds to spare. But no, yeah, that is how Rebecca knows Tony. And hopeful we'll have him on here sometime. I don't know, sometime this summer.
We'll work on it. Let's try to get Donnie first, and then we'll work on Tony when he's got a break between all his activities.
We'll be back with Terry Fair from Vorschlag Motorsports. This is The Finish Line on 93.7 The Ticket.
Early break with Sip and Jake.
Quick question. Where does the term dog pop? I've never seen a pile of dogs in my life. I've never seen that. If we've ever seen just driving down the road, and like, well, there's 12 dogs on top of each other. So where does dog pile come from?
Well, that's a good question.
And that is a standard.
That's a good question.
If you say dog pile to anyone, they know it. It's not dog pile. Never seen a pile of dogs. Never in my life.
I want to know where that comes from.
Early Break with Sip and Jake from 6 to 8 every weekday morning.
Sometimes I just cannot believe all the storms we've gone through here.
I can only hope that we'll be able to leave this house to you one day, baby. You're our legacy.
Planning for these disasters will make sure we're safe and is the best way to protect that legacy.
Protect your legacy. Visit ready.gov/plan for the tools and tips you need to start your emergency preparedness plan today. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them? By their clothes, their age, the way they speak? Would you notice a 16-year-old boy who got his first job,
not for extra spending money, but to help feed his little sisters?
or a mother who's in between jobs and sometimes goes to bed hungry so her kids can have dinner? Or a 14-year-old girl who signs up to every after-school activity, not to make friends, but just to get something to eat? Or a retiree who fell ill and had to choose
between getting medicine or groceries.
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. People you pass by every day but never knew were hungry. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Bank Strong, and the Ad Council.
Mario fue pintor más de 30 años. Cuando me dijo que se le estaban olvidando las cosas, fue difícil. Un día me dijeron que pintara el marco del lado por dentro y pinté el lado de afuera.
Yo le diría a la gente que le diga a su familia lo que está pasando con él.
Si algo se nota diferente, podría ser Alzheimer. Es momento de hablarlo. Visita alz.org/nuestras historias para saber más. Un mensaje de The Alzheimer's Association y The Ad Council.
On the Block with Strick and Austin.
Sometimes playing with a healthy fear is good because it makes you go, hunt it out. Because the more tentative you are, I always told kids, I said, listen, if you don't like this and you don't want to play, don't play. Because you're going to be worse off and get probably hurt more by being tentative in your play as opposed to playing all out.
Weekdays from 2 to 4 on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 a.m, my phone rang. They said, I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action. Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill them at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Adoption of teens from foster care is a topic not enough people know about, and we're here to change that. I'm April Dinwiddie, host of the new podcast, Navigating Adoption, presented by Adopt US Kids. Each episode brings you compelling real-life adoption stories told by the families that live them with commentary from experts. Visit adoptuskids.org/podcast or subscribe to Navigating Adoption, presented by Adopt US Kids. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families and the Ad Council.
Back to the finish line with Mike Melby on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
All right, welcome back to the finish line. This is Rebecca Pearson, Mike Melby, Harrison Arntz behind the wheel, as you say. And hopefully we have Terry Fair also joining us from Vorschlag. He's banging his head with the music. I hope you can hear that, Terry. You're with us.
I'm rocking out.
All right. Oh, your audio sounds fantastic. So, hey, thanks for joining us. So, Terry Fair from Vorschlag Motorsports in Dallas. Okay, first of all, are we pronouncing Vorschlag correctly?
Surprisingly, you are.
Oh, my. Okay, so where on earth did the name Vorschlag come from? Because you're not German, I don't think, and maybe it's not German. What's the story on that?
About 23 years ago, when I created the website, It was a short URL. This was what you did in the early 2000s. And I was working on German cars. I was doing my first LS swap into a BMW E36 chassis. And I just kind of picked a random word that I saw Verschlagenhammer, which was a sledgehammer. And that's kind of the simple solution to just bigger, on everything. So Vorschlag itself means the answer to a question. There wasn't a lot of thought into it. I'm sorry, Rebecca.
Oh no, well that's more than I was expecting. So that's fantastic, Terry. Well, thanks for joining us. As I told you, we spoke a little bit earlier here today. We're in dirt track land here, but you're in pavement land. Your background and how you and I met way back when through friends of friends when I was in Virginia and you were, I guess, in Texas. I can't even remember, but we have mutual friends. Mm-hmm. And so I have seen Vorschlag Motorsports go from the parts in the attic, in the bedroom, on the living room floor with no furniture to what appears to be now quite an empire. So tell us a little bit of the story of you starting Vorschlag Motorsports.
It started off as a hobby website where I kind of chronicled all the projects I'd worked on. I really started web stuff back in the mid 90s and was just taking pictures and weighing things and always, fascinated with data. And in the early days of the internet, there just wasn't much out there. I was doing some, like I said, the LS swap in my garage starting in about 2000. And, we just had a lot of weird car projects going on. And in 2005, I had the opportunity to buy a friend's business who had made a camber plate, and we grew that into, the last 20 years of doing this. It's just been crazy. It started at the house, like you said. That's when you knew me early on, and then we've moved to a couple different commercial spaces, and then we finally built our own building 5 years ago and moved that behind a house on some country property, and kind of shunned the customer traffic because that didn't make us any money. And this lets us focus on what we're good at and have a bunch of CNC machines in the shop and some fabricators and builds a few race cars, but it's mostly building suspension products.
Terry Fair from Vorschlag Motorsports joining us. Terry, one thing that I would like you to share, because I heard the story when I listened to a podcast that you were on. Mm-hmm. Mostly companies like yours, they may start from scratch or whatever, but it's because your family is super mechanically inclined and they're all about cars. That was not necessarily the case with you. How did you get into cars?
Sometimes I think you're just born broken, and that was my problem. None of my family has any mechanical aptitude whatsoever. And I knew from, an early age, I was taking apart the toaster and the microwave, and my mother's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I know, I'll fix it. I'll put it back together." And it's just something, I had to tinker from, I played with the Legos and the erector sets, and it just grew from that, and was tinkering with car. I bought my first car when I was 14. And by the day I was 15, I had my license and was driving to work. So I've always had that drive to just do things mechanical. In junior year of high school, I ran into some buddies at Texas A&M, and they were doing this thing called autocross where they're driving around in a parking lot. All I knew was drag racing. And I was hooked. I rode through with a few people, and I'm like, this is insane, and this is legal. So I went to school there and became an engineer and, worked in industry for about 10 years and realized that I needed to be an entrepreneur. And that's not a compliment. That's not a brag. Some people just don't work well for other people. I probably would have made a lot more money just sticking with, Fortune 500 jobs, but had to do my own thing and just saw some things in the market that weren't done right. And my brain just couldn't leave it alone. And we just attack those things. And that's our main goal, is to make products that fill a need in some form of motorsports.
I think it's been really cool because I knew Terry when he was a youngster and when he was going through this kind of change. And to say that you were an entrepreneur, that was a great way to describe Terry. You're a little bit older and a little bit more mellow to me now than when we first met, which, running a business can do that. And your lovely wife, of course, is a big piece of how you guys got started.
Huge.
But how did you decide ultimately what part of motorsports business you wanted to be in? You're doing parts and suspensions. So how did you, eventually end up with what you're currently doing?
Yeah, it was just my passions. I started off autocrossing, like I said, but where I went to school in College Station, Texas, we had Texas World Speedway for many, many years. And so I worked at the track and did some test automotive long-term test driving there, and started doing high performance driving events where they drive around track in your own car. And I would like work the corners just to be able to run one session, when I was a broke college kid, and just got exposed to a lot of motorsports. Still did a lot of drag racing in college. Still love that. But the drag racing industry is so huge, and there's people that's all they do. And I saw the what I call the road course or the track crowd just being ignored, and saw so many flaws with what people were selling. And just from my, I guess, 35 years of doing that kind of sport since I was a teenager, I've just seen, holes in the market, and like, I can make something better than that. That's the best option. And so it just kind of drove me to focus on, the autocross and then the road course stuff significantly more, to create products that no one else makes. And sometimes I'll sell other people's products, and we'll work with them, and we have some engineering relationships with several big companies. And so we'll do some testing for them, but selling other people's products just doesn't make a lot of money anymore. Not with, the Summit Racings and the Tire Racks and the Amazons of the world. It's just really hard to make money selling OPP or other people's parts. So I've really had to focus the last 5 years on what makes us the most profit and what can bring the most benefit to customers. Because we could sell a lot of things that would be shiny and sparkly and silly and make a quick buck. But after doing this for 18 years, I want to be there in 10 more years. So it's getting that customer loyalty is key, and not selling garbage that it could potentially make us more money. It's not about the money. It's about, providing something of value.
Terry Fair from Vorschlag Motorsports down in Dallas joining us. Do you have a favorite type of car to work on? Is it a Corvette? Is it a Porsche? What is your favorite one to just dig in and rebuild and customize to the best of your ability?
There are great sports cars out there, but for me, the worse the car is from the factory, the better it is for my business. So you'll see me racing in cars sometimes. Like, why did you buy this, 30-year-old Camaro, or why are you running this Mustang when you could be in a Corvette? And I'll rotate different cars through. We typically have 10 or 20 cars that we own, and we're always trying to cover as many bases as we can. And I learned from what are people bringing to the track? What are they racing? And if it's a brand new Volkswagen Golf R, I'll get a tester and make some products for that. But the worse the car is from the factory, the better. And the more popular, the better. So we try to, attack the markets that have the best payoff.
And of course, you've opened yourself up for the question, which is, what is the worst car on the market at the moment that you love to work on?
That's
you let me into it.
Yeah, I don't necessarily want to call anybody out, but some of the front wheel drive, all wheel drive cars are just terrible, and we can make big gains in those. And if we start with something that's too good, I can't make it a lot better. So every car that we do a long-term test on, that we'll either own or work closely with a local tester, is I'll go to the road course that we do a lot of testing at Motorsport Ranch Crescent, and run a certain configuration and get a baseline lap with me. And I can usually get a consistent lap. So I'll get a baseline lap, and then we'll start doing the normal things that we've proven that make the biggest lap time drop. And, so that I try to attack those, and I can make a bigger drop. If I start with a Porsche GT3, I'm not going to make a big drop. They already come with some really high-end suspension and dampers and camber and really good tires. But the terrible cars, the base model, late model Mustang, I bought a 2018 Mustang for $34,000, and I could have bought a Shelby for $68,000. And instead of that $20,000 difference up front, we incrementally added things and well exceeded what the Shelby was. And so that's what I love, to start with the worst model of a car if it's not just doomed, and it gives us more, room to grow.
So from a standpoint of average Joe, like, I've got a 2009 Mazda 6. It's a fun little car. It's the Grand Touring that has the 18-inch wheels and the higher performance, et cetera.
Sure.
How can I improve my own car? What can people that are not experts do to adjust things on their car to be more fuel efficient, maybe a little bit better performance, just make it a better car?
Again, I'm focused more on going around a road course. What's a lap time, or doing an autocross and being competitive in a class. Generally, the biggest time drop we can do is tires. And everything I do in suspension is to make the tire you end up on as efficient as possible, to put the most G-forces through it, longitudinally, laterally. So all the suspension we do is to keep the tire on the ground, and dampers are what you do that with, to keep them loaded evenly. So we change the spring rates, significantly sometimes, to keep the weight transfer under braking and cornering, left to right, front to back, to keep that under control. Things like sway bars. So it just depends on what your end goals are. Most people that come to us like, I just want a fun, street car, we can point them in the right direction. But generally when someone's like, I'm doing road course events and I'm taking times, or I'm doing competition, time attack, time trial, or I'm doing competitive autocross. And we generally ask, a lot of questions and say, okay, what are your goals? What's the class allow? What do you want to do? And we can figure out what their budget is and make sure they don't waste their money on worthless doodads, because 80% of what's out there is just not helpful. It just lightens your wallet. So we try to avoid that and keep people on, okay, tires, the most important thing. Let's maximize your wheel and tire. Now let's, get the alignments right so we don't shred the outside corner. So that's our big product that we make, is our camber caster plates. And it's not a brag, but we make the best one in the world. We private label them to really big suspension companies, sell them all over the planet. So that's usually an early thing, because it makes a big time drop. And then we start talking about shocks and springs and sway bars, and they start to diminish in what they can do as far as performance. But then there's always a trade-off. The more radical you make the car, the worse it is in the street. So that's another conversation. Is this your daily driver? Where do you live in the country? How bad are the road? Are you in DC? Oh God, we got to do something different. Versus if you're, in LA and it's a smooth road and you're doing canyon driving. So there's a lot of questions. There's not like one size fits all answer. And so those relationships, and people actually call us on the phone and will sometimes talk to, me or my head engineer, Jason, for an hour to get a good feel of what they're doing and what they really need, not what they want, because they want the shiny, sparkly, pretty, oh, I'm going to go to the car show and have scene points. Like, that's not what we do. If you're serious and you're like, hey, I've been doing this for 2 years and I want to get better, and the car seems to be holding me back, and we can kind of suss that out by, what are your lap times, or where do you race? And we can kind of figure out where you are in your journey from beginner to, the amateur level, high-end racers, and we can kind of help you along that way.
So, Terry, you've been to our town, Lincoln here. You part of SCCA. In fact, when I asked you earlier if you've been racing lately, you said yes yesterday. So give us a little idea about racing and talk to us, since we're here in Lincoln, we've got a lot of locals listening to us. Talk to us about SCCA Nationals here, what you've done here in Lincoln, what you think of the airport, the courses, that kind of thing. What kind of racing are you doing these days?
So the Solo National Championships, which is what is done in Lincoln right now, it's the autocrossing, the pinnacle of autocrossing. And it's been going on for 50 years. This is the 50th anniversary this year. And I think they had 1,300 people sign up for this year's Nationals in Lincoln. And it sold out in 4 hours. It's just never been this popular. It's always been just growing and growing and growing. And if they would have allowed 1,500, it would have sold out in another 2 hours. So Lincoln is so good. The facilities are just top notch. It's a big, giant concrete site. And it's not just that. We used to have a good concrete site in Salina, Kansas, and then Topeka had a good site. But the town, it draws people in. And going to the Haymarket and doing things in Lincoln, it makes it so much of a better experience. Because when you're at Solo Nationals, you're there for 7 days. Usually, it's usually a week-long event. And usually race 2 of those days. You do a practicing. So there's a lot of nights like, let's go into town. And you can always find something good in Lincoln. So I love going to Lincoln. And then SCCA is the top for autocrossing. There's no competitor, but the road course aspect, SCCA has club racing, and now they have time trial and they have Track Night in America. Track Night in America is just an easy, usually weeknight, go to the road course, and you'll get like 3 sessions, and it's really inexpensive and doesn't require a lot of prep. Time trial is a level up from that, and they have a lot of crossover with the SCCA autocross classes, and it's you on a road course getting lap times and then comparing your times with other cars in your class, and it's competitive, and it's really, really fun. And then they have club racing or wheel-to-wheel racing, which, you see some of that on TV, and at the pro level, they even have pro stuff too. But that's another level of cost and risk, and car-to-car contact is common. So I usually stay away from that and stick with the time trial and autocross. it's more relatable. You know, there's tens of thousands of people doing that, not hundreds of people in the country. So it's a bigger, you know, customer base, it's a bigger market. And we've kind of, you know, sadly, we've kind of had to ignore pro racing. We have some of our parts as part of a spec in certain different series, and that's always fun, but it's the regular guy that gets in his car and drives to work and then on Saturday goes to the track, or, you know, a woman who's got a daily driver and loves to go autocross and compete and do both. And that's where we kind of excel, is those kind of dual duty cars.
Terry Fair from Vorschlag Motorsports joining us here on the Finish Line on 93.7 The Ticket. The event you're talking about, the Pro Solo Championships, they start September 1st, and they run the 2nd and 3rd for the SCCA Pro Solo Championship finale, and then September 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, it is the Solo National Championships right out at Air Park. So you're going to be up for that whole week, I would assume.
Yeah, when we come up, we do the whole week. Some people don't do pro solo because it is more of a professional level of autocrossing, and it's got a drag race start and a side by side. It's a different event. It's really unique. It's really fun. But I typically don't do the pro solos. I have in the past. I'm not very good at it. Even though I have a drag racing background, I can cut the lights. There's a consistency thing, and you have to. It's like an elimination round. It's a more complicated series, and the classing's a little different. So I typically do the Solo Nationals, which is the 5-day event, and then the Pro Solo I'll just watch. So yeah, when I come up there, I'll typically do that, and I'll work with customers. I'm usually busy every day. I'm there, going over the practice course and helping people dial in their shocks, or, you know, making suggestions on setup. I get asked 1,000 times, what tire pressures do you run? I've made memes about it. It gets asked so often. But yeah, so it's a busy week when I go to Solo Nationals. And this year I'm going to go to the SCCA Time Trial Nationals, which is at NCM, National Corvette Museum in Kentucky. And that'll be the first time I've gone to their nationals. I've been to NASA, has its own, you know, time trial and road race nationals. I've been to that many times. But this will be my first year to go SCCA Time Trial Nationals. I'm building 2 cars for that. My wife's, 23 BRZ, my Mustang. And we're building for certain classes, and we're excited about that. I just hope everything comes together in time.
The answer to the tire pressure question, put it on a business card. And every time somebody asks, just hand them the business card.
I do. I have a joke, and my answer is always 500 PSI. So I have a special, you might be able to see it behind me. It's a tire gauge, and the gauge only reads 500 every It's a custom. My employees made that for me. It's really funny. But because there's just too many variables, like what tire pressure, I need to know like 20 things to even get you in the ballpark. So
there you go.
It's a running joke.
But that shows a little bit of the quality of what you're doing, Terry. And again, having seen you, do your business over the years, it's super cool to see what you've been able to do with this, to watch you guys grow up in the business and be able to do this. I know it was very risky in those early days. So I'm super impressed. It's really fun to have you on. Well, it is. I'm allowed to say that. I'm older than you, remember? So when I moved to Texas, I had a great intent of actually getting back out and autocrossing. So I bought a 6-speed Mazda 3. I still have it. I brought it up here.
Nice.
So maybe if we can get the McCalls, our mutual friends, Jason and Linda, hope they're listening. They're back from their voyage across the country, and they came through Lincoln, which was cool. Yeah. Maybe we can all get out there and I can get back behind my car and see if I can do anything. It's been many, many years since I did any autocross, but that would be fun. So tell us a little bit then about from your side what you're seeing on parts, tires, the latest and greatest that people are demanding, in the world of autocross and road course racing.
Hey, there's been a kind of an awakening and a new tire war. So the for the longest time, SCCA Solo allowed what we call R compound, or dedicated race tires, but they were DOT legal in name only, and everything had to be on Hoosiers, and you couldn't really drive them on the street. They got so soft they would pick up everything, and you'd get a nail, driving home. So they kind of went away from that about 5-6 years ago, and they brought 200 treadwear, regular real street tires back into the main classes, and that kind of woke up a lot of things and made it accessible to a lot more people. It's part of why there's 1,300 people that signed up for Lincoln Nationals this year, is because a lot more people can do it, and you don't have to have a car you bring on a trailer or change your tires there. So some people can drive to events, and both the time trial and SCCA Solo, they can drive on these 200 treadwear tires, and it's made for a frenzy of new tire options that change from month to month. and brands you've never heard of. Just, I posted something on Friday. Somebody sent me some pictures of a new Nankang. It's some Chinese tire. It's a 200 tread wear, and they had a new size. And it was like the most viral post I'd had in a month. So tires have become like, I probably have $20,000 of tires in my shop right now because I'm having to test all these things because it changes so fast. And so I want to have a good opinion and back it up with data. And so tires have been a real challenge to keep ahead of, but it's fun. And the tires are actually usable, and you can drive to an event and not just, in death fear of, running over a nail or getting a flat. So the tires have changed a lot. Suspension, has been really big for many years. And there's a lot of electronic shocks that come on, sports cars now, and people think that they're magic. They're not. They try to fake spring rate, and we kind of have to fight with, that mentality of, you can't have a magic shock that makes the springs differ. It's still just a damper. So there's a lot of that. Yeah.
A lot of things going on. So.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I'm going to ask you about tires when we come back from the break. Sure. If you've got another 10 minutes to spend with us, you have opinions, and we're going to ask you some of them when we come back. I do remember that. We're going to go to a break right now. This is 93.7 The Ticket, The Finish Line.
You've driven by GE Landscape Supply countless times, likely without even knowing, at 6701 Cornhusker Highway. Now it's time to stop in. GE Landscape Supply sells to homeowners and contractors with a vast selection of landscaping and construction materials. They sell in bulk to save you money, and you can buy anything from a 5-gallon bucket to a semi-load. And don't forget, they deliver anywhere. Stop by 6701 Cornhusker Highway from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, and 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturdays. Go to GELandscapeSupply.com for more info, or call 402-467-1627.
I know that a lot of times, Mom, it might not seem like I'm listening to you, but I am. I hear you. And what you say really does matter to me.
I mean, let's be honest. No kid likes rules, but I get why we have them. I hear you, and I know it's because you care.
For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Sponsored by DHHS and aired in cooperation with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
The Butchery by Venue is Lincoln's premier specialty grocers. Take the quality of Venue home with you with our hand-cut steaks, handcrafted burgers, and locally sourced offerings. Browse our wide selection of specialty products designed to enhance your dining experiences with cheeses, spices, sauces, and more. We also have an exclusive collection of liquors, whiskeys, and bourbons at prices you're sure to love. Stop in to the Butchery by Venue today, located in our Venue at Home storefront at 70th and Pioneers, just 2 doors down from Venue Restaurant and Lounge.
Hi, this is Pastor Tom. Did you know there's a place kids can seek out help when they're away from home and something goes wrong? They find themselves in a difficult spot or even a dangerous situation. Maybe another child is bullying them or a stranger is following them. Perhaps on a date and things just go bad. In Lincoln, here's where they can find help. It's called Safe Place. Safe Place is a national program for children taking place in thousands of cities across the United States. The People Seating Mission is sponsoring this program in our community and has set up a number of businesses, fire stations, schools, and nonprofits around the city to become safe locations where kids can seek out help. They just need to look for the big yellow sign that says Safe Place on it. Then go inside and ask for help. We will be quickly connected to them and ensure they make it back home or to whatever resources are needed. If you'd like to find out more about Safe Place and ways in which you can get involved, just go to pcmlincoln.org. Remember, when we all do a little, we change a lot.
Old School with DP&J.
As long as it's taken for him to build up that program to be pretty successful by their standards and look pretty successful by Big Ten West standards, you have to take that into accountability. You can't be an impulsive, in the moment type of decision maker, because how you handle Pat Fitzgerald could stymie you from hiring, because those coaches talk.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Gaina Trucking is hiring CDL Class A and B drivers. Gaina Trucking guarantees a 40-hour work week year-round, and their strong team culture makes it not a job, but a career. Gaina Trucking offers health, vision, and dental insurance, 401k with company match, an employee assistance program, and other bonus programs. Build a better career today with great team culture at Gaina Trucking. Learn more and apply today at GainaTrucking.com.
On the Block with Strick and Austin.
sometimes playing with a healthy fear is good because it makes you go, 100 out. Because the more tentative you are, I always told kids, I said, listen, if you don't like this and you don't want to play, don't play. Because you're going to be worse off and get probably hurt more by being tentative in your play as opposed to playing all out.
Weekdays from 2 to 4 on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Back to the finish line with Mike Melby on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back to the finish line here on 93.7 The Ticket, theticketfm.com. Don't forget, if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter, or on Allo Channel 951, it is the Sartor Heyman live stream. And if you want to call or text to be a part of the show, it's the Honda of Lincoln hotline or the Sartor Heyman text line at 402-464-5685. I'm Mike Melby. That's Rebecca Pearson. Austin's not here. Harrison Arndt
We got the
is
same
here.
build. I forgive you a little bit. That lanky guy build.
Harrison driving the car tonight, and Terry Fair from Forschlag Motorsports joining us. Terry, I wanted to touch base with you on one of our big topics in the first segment of the show was the richest week of sprint car racing from a purse standpoint and the history of sprint car racing. You guys in autocross and the SCCA, I'm guessing you're not normally racing for $2 million over a 4-day stretch. How do you guys? There you go. That's your
Trophies.
pay. Yeah.
That's a big
So
thing.
I wanted to get your thoughts though from a dirt track racing perspective. I know, pavement is where it is at for you, but you're in the Dallas area. I'm going to make an educated guess. You've been to Devil's Bowl at Mesquite.
I have, yep.
Okay. Are you a fan of sprint car racing, dirt track racing at all?
I love it. And the other business I'm associated with, Horsepower Research, where I'm one of the partners, we've done, sprint car engines. And I love the horsepower. I love the craziness and pulling wheels coming out of corners. It's just insane. It's just a different level of spending, a different level of sport. It's super popular. It's just not something that I've ever been pushed into or had the opportunity to drive. Done some rally driving, rally cross kind of things, but yeah, sprint car is a whole nother level.
Now, do you ever do anything with gaming from a racing standpoint? Because one of my favorite games is Dirt, which is a rally car racing game.
Yep. Right behind me, you might see it. I've got a big sim rig, and I play either iRacing or an older game called Assetto Corsa. It's really popular, and I use it for training, and I'm learning different tracks. That there's been some new configurations locally, and I spent a few hours on that, and from 1 month to the next, I found 3 seconds on a 2-minute course, just driving the simulator, no changes on the car. So it really does help. I'm terrible in the league, kind of, a bunch of kids will kick my butt on that, but it really helps me. And I have customers that come by like, hey, I had somebody here Friday that had never driven a course, and we were, doing a tech inspection on his car. And I'm like, have you driven this course we're going to run at Saturday? He goes, no. And he spent an hour on that rig and learned the course. So that's Assetto Corsa, and there's some third-party software that called Content Manager, really original name, and they have thousands of cars and tracks, and every track you've never heard of, including some dirt, are on that game. And so, yeah, I spend some time on that rig. My wife does as well, and it really helps us, sharpen our reflexes, but more importantly, learn the elevation, the markers. They've gotten to where they scan them down to like different patches on the road, so you can pick out different, visual markers and learn a course before you've ever gotten there, and it really does help.
So before we let you go, we're all going to have to go here in about a minute or so. Yeah. Okay, I have my Mazda 3, 6-speed. I'm going to streetcar it, drive to the autocross at the Lincoln Airport.
Yeah.
What kind of tires should I get for it?
I mean, there's some really good tires out there. Look for something that's 200 tread wear. That's kind of the universal standard now. Yokohama, Michelin, Bridgestone. It's all the traditional names. They're still really good. Falcon. There's some good stuff out there, and there's some oddball stuff. Get a performance alignment. Get as much negative camber as you can in the front, and that'll save your tires. And if you get serious, call me, and I'll get you some camber blades.
Nice. I love it. Well, you know how it is. You start with one thing, and then you get the bug again, which I definitely will have. And then you get the trailer, and then the truck. And we've had this conversation, right? And then you start tweaking the mods and all that stuff. But hey, Terry, thanks so much for joining us. Great to hear from Dallas. Great to hear about the business. Thanks for sharing your knowledge with us.
That was fun. Thanks anytime.
Alrighty, thank you, Terry. Ricky Simmons is going to take you through the next hour. Get Your Happy On comes your way next right here on 93.7 The Ticket.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger,